right, welcome to the Beast Game Podcast. We're going to review a Marvel Netflix superhero show collaboration called Luke Cage, which is only streaming on Netflix. It stars Mike Coulter as the lead character, Luke Cage. He's been in The Good Wife, Jessica Jones, and as Locke in the Halo video game series. Simone Messick plays Detective Misty Night. She's been in Wayward Pines and Ray Donovan. It stars Mahershala Ali as Cornell Stokes. He's been in House of Cards, The Hunger Games series, and Treme. Lastly, it stars Eric LeRae Harvey as Diamondback. He's been in Boardwalk Empire. And the synopsis is, given super strength and durability by a sabotaged experiment, a wrongly accused man escapes prison to become a superhero for hire. Let's go to Keith.
Yeah, I can give an overview. So basically, Luke Cage's continuation takes place after Jessica Jones came out, about 7 months ago?
Yeah, Jessica
On
Jones came out
Netflix.
last summer, maybe.
Luke Cage is like kind of gone off and is laying low in Harlem while he kind of tries to get his life together at the events of Jessica Jones, namely discovering that his wife was murdered intentionally for some information that has some bearing on how he got his abilities.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and stop there. James, do you want to give your impressions of Luke Cage, just general impressions?
Well, I liked the show. I thought the show was well done. I liked how they continued it from Jessica Jones. You did learn more about Luke's backstory, which I thought was important. I mean, especially for people that are not into the comic or know anything on Luke Cage, this was a great show just to talk about his origins, because a lot of things that I thought I knew, I didn't know. But of course, it could have been changed just for the series itself. They take liberties. Usually they don't go by the comic book to a T, so they take liberties with it. So I believe that this was a great show. The acting was on point. The music, even though the music was everywhere, this was a very soundtrack-based series. I thought on that aspect it was pretty good of it. There were some things that I probably would have changed, but overall I enjoyed it.
Okay, Keith.
I thought they took the entire theme of Luke Cage was one about pretty much empowerment. And that's something you saw back in the 70s with those blaxploitation films. Even though we call them blaxploitation, but it was kind of all about
Community
African Americans
involvement.
doing in the community. And for the most part, it was all about taking what you have and taking what was historically in heritage and just building up on it. But it didn't beat you over the head with it. It was more or less about saying, hey, look, we did this, and this is what we are.
Watching this show, you should feel some type of pride, because it did dig deep into the culture of Harlem. So to me, that was very important.
Personally, I thought it did a better job of doing it than a lot of other shows have tried to do in the past, and that it didn't raise one culture up while putting another one down. It just kept the focus in Harlem and what Harlem was historically, and a very strong female presence in this. A lot of women were running things that you see right off the bat. One of the main villains, and probably one of the best villains I've seen in any Marvel movie or a TV show, came out of this, and she was a woman.
All right.
And,
well, let me go ahead and jump in a little bit. So this is what I thought of Luke Cage. It is a mixture of Coming to America, Do the Right Thing, Black Dynamite, The Last Dragon, New Jack City, and a Wu-Tang album.
Yep. I have absolutely no problem with that, especially with the Wu-Tang part, because, I'm a big Wu-Tang fan. So that was cool with me. And I do agree with you. It did have those elements of those series and movies that you named, but it was still very entertaining. I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it was really good. And then it also raised awareness, like Keith was saying, raised awareness on
racial issues. So that's where I kind of come in with the Coming to America part was the barbershop. The Do the Right Thing was the kind of community, ethnic involvement, and empowerment aspects. Kind of the same thing with Black Dynamite, and also just kind of the 70s exploitation films from that era. The Last Dragon, that just seems it seems to pull some elements from that. And obviously New Jack City with Mahershala Ali, who plays one of the main villains early on in the season. that he's essentially Nino Brown, and then it's so music driven that it's sometimes I wouldn't say a musical, but the soundtrack plays along with what is happening on screen.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah,
Continue.
but let's try to go into some other things.
Hold on.
So
Before we go into other things, it also gave me a New York undercover vibe as well.
I would agree with that. And also for me, because I watch a lot of Law and Order, that Law and Order is something that I watch, and it's like a lot of New York is there in
Mhm.
that.
In general, I kind of like the low keyness of the character. Like Luke Cage didn't start out trying to be a hero; he was just trying to lay low. And then in the end,
He's
and
just an
then it
average
kind of
guy.
progressed on to progress to him trying to do right by someone who helped him out.
Right.
And it's just like the entire story was like a logical progression. You didn't have any leaps of logic or faith to follow it. It was like an event happened, it set everything, sparked everything off. Basically, it was a robbery against Cottonmouth, Cornell Stokes' character, and it involved three people that Luke Cage knew, and he was asked to kind of help one of them out to get him out of that bad situation, and it progressed from there. And
And I will also jump in and say that canonically, there's other elements of the Marvel universe. So it seemed like Marvel had been trying to shy away from a lot of connectivity to the movies. Since this is a TV show, they did reference Iron Man 2 with Justin Hammer.
The
That,
rest of the Avengers as well.
yeah. And those were things that necessarily didn't happen too much in Jessica Jones and Daredevil. It is referenced, but this is, especially with Iron Man 2, that one of the villains in Iron Man 2 is directly referenced, or at least his company is directly referenced. But let's go into talking about some of the main characters. So, James, do you want to give an impression about Luke Cage, or what are your feelings about Luke Cage?
Well, with Luke Cage, I mean, his character progressed a lot. Like Keith mentioned earlier, in the beginning, he was just kind of just trying to keep a low profile, stay out of people's business, and he just wanted to kind of rebuild his life after the incidents in Jessica Jones. But then certain things happened, and it progressed him to move forward and be the hero that we all knew that he was. But he was kind of trying to deny that role because he felt that he owed a debt. I totally understand why he felt he owed a debt because this guy helped him out. So he got more and more involved and he became a hero within the community. So just like the comic, Luke was a hero of the community. He became a hero for hire. So they followed that to
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say to a
if
T.
Shaft had superpowers, it would be
Exactly.
Luke Cage.
That he would be Luke Cage. And he was very positive guy, but he also dealt with demons. I mean, he dealt with things that he didn't understand. He was trying to investigate things about his life and also run away from certain parts of his life that he didn't want people to know about him. So he was running from demons, but at the same time trying to face them head on at times. And then when it came to the point when he had to face them head on, I mean, he did.
All right.
So
Do
I mean,
you
it's
have any comments about Mike Coulter's acting as Luke Cage?
I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, there were some times that it seemed when he expressed emotion of sadness, at times it seemed like it was kind of comical to me because he was just it was just a little bit too over exaggerated. But outside of that, I believed he did a great job. I felt that he was Luke Cage. He had a strong presence. He was intelligent. He had all these things that Luke Cage exemplifies. So I think he did a great job as Luke Cage, except for the parts where he like I said, expressed sadness or just being upset or just angry. It just seemed a little bit too forced. It didn't seem genuine to me.
All right, I agree. Keith.
so what I thought about Luke Cage. Towards the end of the series, I wasn't feeling him too much in Jessica Jones.
Agreed.
But in this, I think about the fourth episode, I was sold. I couldn't imagine anyone else playing the part. I could imagine being loud or rambunctious or anything like that, or aggressive, like that kind of quiet, kind of solid mentality he had, just kind of like not a part of this, but at the same time, I understand it and I'm down with it. He played that to a perfect T. And then you get to the episodes where you have the flashbacks of him in prison. He sold the character for me at that point. He had enough humor and like charisma to pull off a lot of the scenes, especially with the love interest he had in the series as well. So he did a pretty good
Love
job.
interest or
Interest. I said interest.
yeah, okay, add an S.
Yeah. Again, with some exploitation movies, the lead character is always kind of a ladies' man. He did a very good job encompassing what I believe Luke Cage would be. And as Keith mentioned, in Jessica Jones, I was like, I don't really see this guy as being Luke Cage. And as that season went on, the arc of his story for Jessica Jones kind of took a downward spiral because he winds up being one of the antagonists later on in the season by accident. And in this one, his acting and the way that the show is structured, where it is more or less a 70s movie, the way that it approaches itself, it's modern day, but the acting is more 70s, that he did a role that would be comparable to those type of classic movies. So I appreciate his acting, and he didn't really have to do a lot of range, but what he was asked to do was very good. So let's move on to Mahershala Ali's character, Cornell Stokes, who is one of the main antagonists. James, do you have any comments?
I think he did a great job as the character, or AKA Cottonmouth. Which he hated that name. His background was a little kind of odd to me because you see the character that he is now. You delve into the background of that character in the series. I personally would not expect that character to be what he was.
Yeah, because he started out as being a part of a family that was a crime syndicate, but he was the one that was supposed to be the difference maker. He was supposed to be a musician.
Right. And he was supposed to go above and beyond crime and do something better with his life. But instead, it just seemed that he just got wound up and went deep into the crime family.
Yeah, so one family member wanted him to be a musician. The other one wanted him to be a part of the crime syndicate.
Right.
But go ahead and finish.
When he was younger, it did not seem that he had the stomach for it. So you wouldn't expect him to be in a role that he was in. In my opinion, he was not about that life. He was so not about that life when he was younger. And it didn't seem like he was going to be about that life ever. But as you'll see in the series, he was ruthless. He became quite ruthless, and you wouldn't expect that because he was kind of, in my opinion, he was soft.
I would agree. There seemed like times that he would be ruthless, and then other times he just kind of relented. But Keith, you want to go ahead and jump in since you just kind of busted out in laughter?
It's like he was soft.
What is soft?
No, he was like 12 years old, man. What the hell? Like,
no, I think he was older than that, man. He was
13.
He was older than that. But then, like, come on, man. Like, the way he handled it, I mean, of course, he was young, but still. He just seemed like he did not want, like, he wasn't even focused on the crime part of it at all. At all. He was just about his music. And even he mentioned it later on in, like, when he was an adult in the current role that he's in now. How he mentioned that, you know, he could have been a musician. So he still had part of that in him, but yet that part of him was gone when he became part of the family. He just took over. It was a certain part in his life that he decided to take the path and go deeper into the crime family. But, I mean, in the very beginning, like when he was younger, of course, I mean, he just did not have the heart for it. They mentioned that.
Well, Keith, do you want to go ahead and jump in?
Oh, it wasn't that. I don't believe it was that because he was soft. All right, it was basically he was young, and basically his family was kind of how a crime family will operate. They worked and operated under things, but they did have certain rules: no drugs, but they operated with gambling, prostitution, and some other other avenues, protection, but it didn't mess with drugs. And she was kind of like it was a Mama Mabel, who's there, Cornell Stokes' grandmother. She basically ran their little turf the way she wanted to run it, and she didn't brook any nonsense. And the whole idea was to keep all of the businesses in the family. So when his cousin, when Cornell Stokes or Cottonmouth's cousin, Alfred Woodard's character, I forget her name off the top of my head,
Mariah
but
Dillard.
Mariah. She herself was being pushed towards more scholarly pursuits, law school, and everything. So I don't think it was that he was necessarily soft or anything that he was soft. I think it was just he was a kid and he was doing that. But at the same time, his transformation from being what he was to what he is today in the show was pretty stark. You saw the beginnings. You didn't see the whole transformation.
Well, let me just jump in since you talked about Mariah, but there was a little bit of duality between that because you had the cousin wanting Cornell Stokes, Cottonmouth's character, to be the difference maker, and then you had Mama Mabel wanting Mariah to be the difference maker. So it was like one didn't want the other to be involved in the business and to be something more than what they are currently. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I made a comparison to New Jack City, and that's kind of how I feel that his role was to this, that he was Nino Brown, and he ran his turf and he ran his businesses very ruthlessly. And they actually do reference New Jack City towards I want to say the last episode where it's like, am I my brother's keeper? And the only thing that I would say is that Mahershala Ali did a very good job in conferencing a villain, a likable villain, because he was well liked in the community, but also feared. And the only issue I had with this character was that his death sequence happened very abruptly, and the way that it played out, it works for the story, but the way it was filmed just did not work for me.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly because I don't know. It just seemed like the way that he died, I expected him to go out more
violently.
What? Like he
got pushed through a window and then smashed in the face. That is it.
No, that's pretty damn violent.
No. See, what we're trying to say is like a blaze of glory, not like I fell out the window and getting hammered.
Yeah,
with
New Jack City.
His death fit with the story and what was going on.
I mean, it worked.
Or think of the end of the Training Day or something. That's how his death should have been. Because there are already a lot of quick deaths because Cottonmouth's boy just gets thrown off a roof, and I knew it was coming, but it was just like, hey, now he's dead. He's no longer a main character. And the same thing happened in Daredevil, the first season, where the guy that was helping Kingpin just kind of randomly dies like relatively quickly. But let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about Mariah Dillard, who is played by Alfred Woodard. James, do you have any comments?
With her, it just seems that she was definitely not part of the plan to be.
Well, let me just jump in. So her character plays a councilwoman in Harlem that she toes the line between being a legitimate person and then her cousin, who is Mahershala Ali, Cornell Stokes, Cottonmouth, is on the wrong side of the law, but also portraying himself as a legitimate businessman.
Right. And she was not on, she was portraying herself to be on the right side of the law, but she was also on the wrong side of the law as well. So they were both had their hands dirty. But I believe that, of course, he was way deeper into the dirt than what she was. So it just seemed, like I said, I just find it funny that the person that what's her name, Mama Mabel, wanted to be out of the whole crime thing altogether, actually end up playing a big part in it later on in the series. It's just funny. The person that probably should have been doing it from the very beginning probably should have been her and not Cottonmouth. That's my opinion. I believe she did a good job. She's always done a good job at acting. She's a pretty good actress in my opinion. She aged well, for one. I just believe that the way that they progressed that character from what she started off as from the very beginning to the end was pretty good. I mean, it was a good progression. It worked out. At first, I wasn't sure it was going to work out after the events happened, but she fit the role. She became a reincarnation of Mabel, which she didn't want to be, but I mean, it
By
was in the cards for her.
happenstance, and the arc of the show
Yeah.
takes her in that direction. Keith.
I think I echo James's sentiment, but I'll go one step further in that I kind of think, as much as I like Alfred Woodard's acting, she's really not done a bad role. She's been pretty solid in most of it, not everything she's ever done. I think the way the role was, the character was written, it probably was written with a younger actress in mind, because she's in her 60s and everything, and while she does look good and stuff, and she fit that character, they probably should have edited the script or changed the script a bit more to suit her age.
So, go ahead, continue.
It feels like this would have been like in the hands of a young woman, because towards the end there was a certain sexual component, but kind of didn't work with Alfred Woodard right now, because she's too mature for that type of setting and situation, and it didn't quite work. So you probably could have cut out the whole insinuation that she and Shades were romantically involved.
Yeah, which I just found a little odd towards the end of the season.
That was awkward.
Yeah, that was not. Yeah, exactly. It kind of came off as awkward.
That was very cringeworthy in my opinion. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
But it came off a little awkward. Plus, the age difference between her and Cottonmouth was readily apparent.
Yeah, so
Like,
you can
and
tell
when
it's
they were
20
kids,
years.
like 10 years. And yeah, granted, she looks good for her age, but Cottonmouth was in his 40s, and she's clearly in her 60s. So it's
Yeah, but
early
when
60s,
the
but-
flashback sequences happen, they
They're
are
closer.
about the same age.
Yeah.
So
So they wanted Alfred Woodard in that. They should have done something with the age. Could have cut out the whole the romantic angle, or they could have gone that romantic or that sexual component to it. Made that screen presence a little different. Could have gone with somebody other than Shades or something.
Her assistant.
It could have played off a little bit.
kind of made the summer
differently.
romance with him. But let me go ahead and jump in. I believe Alfred Woodard played a believable politician. At least her maneuvering or trying to spin situations seems like something a politician would do, a corrupt politician, let's put it in that context. Her rise to power in the show seemed a little forced, because Cottonmouth is out of the story probably by the 5th or 6th episode, and kind of from that point on,
Well, the 6th episode, he's gone.
yeah, and from that point on, the focus is on her and trying to maintain her status as a politician, and also trying to deal with the other antagonists that we will get to in a few moments. But I just felt that her arc and rise to power seemed like it needed to be a little bit more fleshed out to me. But let's go on and we can talk about somebody's favorites. Misty Night.
Sure.
So Simone Messick plays Detective Misty Night. She's on the hunt for Luke Cage, but also is a part of the Harlem community. She has grown up there, played basketball. Is well liked in the community. But James, do you want to go ahead and talk about her?
Well, I believe she did a great job as Misty Night. She was a strong woman. Misty's a very strong woman, very independent.
Well, let me interject for a second, because another thing that I kind of felt, and there was an actress from this TV show in there kind of early on that relates to Misty Night. It also reminded me of elements of The Wire. So the police portions of that.
Police detective?
Yeah.
I mean, the captain?
Yeah.
Former captain.
Yeah.
She was one of the police detectives in The Wire. But go
She
ahead,
was the
James.
captain.
Yeah. She was in that. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, she does look familiar. I wasn't quite sure where I saw her from, because I didn't really watch The Wire that much. There was character development with her. She was very flawed, but at the same time, it took her some steps to understand her flaws, because she thought that she was doing everything right. And it's always two sides to a story, or more than what it seemed to be. She was just very straightforward and just about, this is the law, you gotta follow the law works, the system works, all this works. But you see throughout the whole series that her idea of what's right and wrong tends to change because of certain circumstances. She was a control freak. That was one thing. She, like, when she felt that she was out of control, she lashed out.
Let me provide some context. So what happens is that Luke Cage becomes a villain in the show, a villain in the sense that he's been villainized by the people against him. So Cottonmouth, Mariah Dillard, and another character that we will talk about, which is called Diamondback, put up a front against Luke Cage. They are 3 against 1, and eventually turn the community, turn the police against Luke Cage. So where you have something like Spider-Man, the police might be happy that Spider-Man came to be involved. Luke Cage is a wanted criminal. They are trying to track him down and spend the better part of maybe 5 or 6 episodes treating him as a villain. So Detective Misty Night is involved in a lot of that, and she is towing the line if Luke Cage is a good person or a bad person, wants to follow the law, wants to follow the rules, but lines get blurred. Well, Keith, do you want to go ahead and...
She fit the character, and I think she was pretty accurate in terms of what was going on with her comic book character. Took a realistic approach to her abilities that were in the comic book. In the comic books, she had a mechanical arm. She had her right arm was artificial, so she had abilities through her bionic arm, and she also had like a psychic ability to see a crime scene. So basically she would use that in her detective work, and in the show kind of shows that she takes a moment and she kind of replays events that she sees within a crime scene or photos.
She totally zones out. They mention that a lot.
They mention that a lot, and work very well with this show. So, and her character and her partner added that element of the police procedural to it. I think that's one of the main elements that grounded the whole show. Here you got a guy he's bulletproof, super strong in a world where the incident has occurred, where guys run around with magic hammers and invincible Iron Man suits. So her actions and her arc and everything from her point of view took an extremely grounded and realistic approach. Now, she didn't hate Luke Cage, or she wasn't pissed off at Luke Cage because he was a criminal. She was angry because he was at the center of everything. The minute he got into town,
as a detective you would connect the dots, piece things together, and the logical answers seem to be Luke Cage.
Yeah, the other interesting thing about it is I thought they handled the element where kind of the first episode, she and Luke Cage sleep together. She ended up going to his place and they ended up having sex. That relationship never progressed past that point. At the same time, there was a tension, but it was something that it was believable, that kind of like not awkward tension, but that sort of,
it comes up randomly when there are other characters interested in Luke Cage that she may mention something. There is a line about coffee. Did you go get coffee with him? And coffee means sex. Let me go ahead and comment on a couple of things. Obviously, I made some comparisons to The Wire, and for me, I like a lot of police procedurals, and I like that aspect. Her psychic abilities didn't bother me. I'm not as familiar with her character as I am with Luke Cage, but I feel as if her role did what was necessary, that her acting was above par, that it wasn't annoying, and she is a main focus of the season because she is also at the center of everything and was likely in almost every episode. So I really liked her character. I liked the interactions between her and some of the criminals, and also when she flips out on a witness, that seems like something that happens in cop movies, cop TV shows, that you're going overboard now and someone has to put you on probation or something. So we're going to get into another character, and we're going to talk about Claire, who is played by Rosario Dawson, who has reprised the role of Night Nurse, and this is the third show now. So she was in Daredevil season 1 and 2 as someone that happens to stumble upon Daredevil Matthew Murdock and begins to help take care of him, help heal him from wounds. And then in Jessica Jones, Jessica Jones, I believe, came into a hospital looking for another character and then ran into Rosario Dawson's character. I can't remember properly, but I do remember them going to a hospital and that she basically becomes somebody that will essentially become part of Luke Cage's storyline, because in Jessica Jones she begins to take care of Luke Cage because I believe he took a shotgun blast to the head. Daredevil season 2, she is still a nurse, but she sees a lot of things going on in the hospital that the hospital is trying to cover up and decides to leave and quit. And in this one, it follows up on her quitting and going to her mom, which I believe she was in Daredevil at some point. Her mom owns a coffee shop, cafe, and she's going to work at times for her mom. James, would you like to comment about Claire?
Well, I like the character. I like the character. I like the character. I like how she ties into like just the whole every series, every Marvel Netflix series she ties into. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, she's very interwoven between these series. So the role that she plays for Luke Cage isn't necessarily trying to heal him, but there is a sexual relationship or the potential for the one to be there that never develops. But it becomes romantic at a certain point.
Right. But then also, she was there I believe she was there to give him confidence on what he needs to do, on what he needs to be. She was a person that was telling him, like, look, you need to do this. You need to do that. You need to help people. I mean, it was her and another character that we'll talk about later that was kind of pushing him towards that path of a hero. He was also helping him trying to find out more and more about his past. She was a very pivotal character in this series, I believe. She did a great job, like she did.
She helped humanize Luke Cage. She helped him understand that it's not always about yourself. It is about the people around you, the people that care about you. So, Keith, do you want to go ahead and make a comment?
Rosario Dawson's awesome. I know James had a question about the love interest that kind of peaked with between her and Luke Cage, but it actually fit, and it didn't feel forced. Her coming back to New York is a direct result of what happened in Daredevil season 2. That made a whole lot of sense that she was be freaked out, but at the same time, I don't know where her character is progressing past this point. But I mean, at the same time, I guess we'll see. I think the next series is the Iron Fist. And then
the Punisher.
Then the Punisher or Defenders.
Would probably say that the Punisher might be next, and then maybe the Defenders. But
you know what? Maybe she is the glue that brings all the Defenders together, because she's tied into all their into their stories.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure about how she's connected to Iron Fist, but Iron Fist and Luke Cage are connected.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But when she gets fully invested into the story, it shows she's actually. I don't want to put a bad thing out saying she wasn't useful before, but she was freaking useful. Like actually in Jessica Jones, you show that when he took that shotgun to the head and she was able to relieve the pressure from fluid building up in his brain.
Yeah, by going in through his eye. That was the only part of Luke Cage that wasn't bulletproof. Or Luke Cage can withstand a lot of damage. That is his superpower. I don't think we mentioned that before, but he also has super strength.
And he has a healing factor too.
Yeah. So he's a cross between Wolverine and kind of a low budget Superman. But go ahead.
That's jacked up. It made a person with superpowers believable at that point. That's the kind of the whole thing about Luke Cage. It was
that's the whole thing about all these Marvel collaborations with Netflix, that these are average people that, when called upon, take the step forward. Kind of in the same vein as someone like Batman, where it's just they become a better person to say, I want to help. And sometimes reluctantly, I want to help. In the case of Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, that they are people that would be your next door neighbor but have superpowers.
Right. You can relate to them. You can't relate to a person from Krypton, Keith.
But I'll just go ahead and make a comment that I like the interplay between Rosario Dawson and her mother, because her mother becomes a somewhat minor figure, also is there to help and understand that she's there to protect her daughter. So at some point, she tells Luke Cage, like, really need to take care of her because otherwise I'll be after you. And he's like, yes, ma'am. And Rosario Dawson has played the role that she's played, and she's very effective at it. In every series that she is a focal point, at least for a few episodes, but in this one, a very integral part of the story.
This is probably the most I've seen of her. I mean,
Yeah, because Daredevil season 1, she might have been in maybe like 4 or 5 episodes. And
right,
then,
but this one she made a difference compared to the other series that she was in. And she didn't really. I mean, she was there. She made a small difference. This one, it was just a bigger role. She played a bigger part. And she meant a lot more to the story.
Yeah, dude would have died without her, and then he wouldn't progress. Actually, the story would have stopped dead. I mean, she was saving what, about 3, 4 people, like, in doing that course of that. I mean, she saved Misty Night, saved Luke Cage a couple times.
and also, I forgot what that character's name was, but the one that worked in Harlem's Paradise. She
Yeah, the
helped
girl
her.
who screwed him over. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so let's go into the next character, which is going to be Diamondback, who is played by Eric LeRae Harvey. So he becomes one of the main antagonists other than Alfred Woodard. So you have Cottonmouth, who his arc peaks at episode 6. And then you still have 7 more episodes to go. But Diamondback is the person pulling the strings above Cottonmouth and pulling strings for Luke Cage. James,
He's
you
the
want to
puppet
comment on
master.
Diamondback?
Like you said, he's pulling strings. He's the puppet master. He's the one that's coordinating everything with basically all the characters. I liked him. I think he was a great character. I mean, there was a lot more to him, but he was so determined to just ruin Luke Cage. And later on, like once you watch the series, you'll understand why. He held resentment for a long time. The ties between them two are strong, but yet, I mean, it's very toxic as well.
Yeah. So, Keith, do you want to go ahead and just describe a couple of things between the history of Diamondback and Luke Cage?
Yeah, basically, since they grew up together. He was the one who kind of sets Luke Cage up to go to jail. And there's a background story, a closer family connection that they go into. But at the same time, it's kind of like Luke Cage feels responsible for Diamondback's sort of descent right now into his current role,
Yeah.
which is a little. Actually, it's pointed out by another character as to, like, this that doesn't make any kind of sense, but at the same time, Luke Cage feels that way, so he kind of takes it very personally to take him on. Kind of this omnipotent presence in the background since the first episode, as the guy that's responsible for supplying the weaponry that Cottonmouth sold. The fact that he came on board and was the one who nearly killed Cage, 3 times? 3 times?
Yeah.
That just kind of cemented him. I thought the entire preacher's son type of mentality, that his quoting scripture as he dealt with people, was pretty spot on for that character. It was their own personal Netflix stamp on that. That made him far more sinister to my mind.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
He was more intimidating.
let me jump in. Earlier, I made a comment about The Last Dragon.
Oh, I know you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And
Go
he
ahead.
comes in straight up like show enough.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, he looks like showing up, but yeah, he kind of looks the same. Like
Again, this plays off of a lot of movies. It plays off a lot of genres from the 70s, early 80s. He just comes in. I'm just going to destroy everybody. Everybody needs to listen to me. I'm super bad. And you know it. And
Should have had his own theme music, man.
Yeah.
That would have worked out perfectly.
with him, again, he becomes one of the main antagonists. He is the centerpiece of Luke Cage's downfall, his initial downfall when he is falsely accused of a crime, his downfall as far as Harlem is concerned, that he is one of the people that sets up Harlem against him. And he is also a person that is a regular person. He does not have superpowers. So in this instance of the show, Luke Cage is the only person with superpowers. So in order to gain superpowers, he uses Justin Hammer's technology, who Justin Hammer in Iron Man 2 was played by Sam Rockwell, who had a competing company next to Tony Stark. So the referential connection is Justin Hammer is someone that wanted to have some technology that could compete with the Iron Man suit. So what happens is that Diamondback gains some access to guns that can kill superheroes and also a suit that can mimic some powers that Luke Cage has, which is super strength. The next to last episode when he just walked in. I mean, he comes on looking like a broke Judge Dredd.
What the hell, man? Like that. Oh, what? Come on, man. That his costume is taken right from the comic book.
This suit gives him superpowers, but the actor I have not seen before. I know he's been in some stuff, but he is essentially playing a 70s villain. And that is all that he's asked to do. He does it effectively. Interested to see him in the future. His background with Luke Cage is fine. That they are essentially brothers, that his father, who was a preacher, who was a holy man, he begins to fall in love with the church secretary, but he is also married. And the church secretary turns out to be Diamondback's mother, that they have a child, and it's acknowledged that something funny has happened. When I say funny, something weird as far as the church is concerned has happened, that there's another child, and that Luke Cage's mother, who could not get pregnant, suddenly has a child. So there's two children that are the same age that are being born around the same time. Luke Cage's father never really wants to acknowledge Diamondback's character. He keeps him at arm's length and always pushes Luke Cage to be the better man, which sets up the conflict between them, that he doesn't feel respected, he doesn't feel loved. That's where
Diamondback has serious daddy issues.
Yes, that's where all of his issues lie, that his father did not respect him, his father did not love him as much as he should, did not respect his mother enough to do the right thing.
To acknowledge her.
Yeah.
He basically kicked her to the curb because they did mention that his mother died alone.
Yeah.
Died alone.
So let's go ahead and talk about Shades. So James, do you want to talk about another antagonist who is named Shades, who is Theo Rossi? If anyone had seen Sons of Anarchy, I was like, oh, it's Juice. Juice without the tattoos. So
And Juice without the last season. Good God.
Yeah, because Juice died at some point. But
well, that's probably what he's in the.
Oh, he didn't just die.
James, do you want to go ahead and comment about the other antagonist, Juice?
Juice. Shades.
Yeah, sorry, Shades.
With Shades, I love this character. He was just in everything, and he seemed like he had everything lined up, all his ducks lined up in a row. He had a plan for a plan for a plan for a plan. He was everywhere. And to me, even though I mentioned that Diamondback was a puppet master, it seemed like Shades was also a puppet master because he was just controlling everything, or had a hand in everything that was going on, everything that was moving. He was manipulating Mariah. He had something to do with Cottonmouth. I mean, he was just all over the place. In essence, he actually had a confrontation with Diamondback. I mean, he was just everywhere. I believe Theo Rossi did a very good job as Shades. I liked the character. I liked how he was prepared for everything. I liked he was there when in prison with Luke. So he knew about Luke, but he didn't expect Luke to be alive. He was just everywhere. And the way he just manipulated everyone was perfect. And I love that he manipulated the living hell out of Mariah to get her to do whatever he wanted to. But one thing I did not like, and we talked about this earlier, the whole setup for a relationship between Mariah and Shades, it just was cringeworthy. It was just, God, it didn't seem right. It just seemed like a grandmother kissing their grandson. It didn't seem right. It just was off.
Keith, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. The way Theo Rossi played his intelligence is just he wasn't flamboyant. You can kind of see the ambition that he wanted more. But it was that kind of counselor role that he kind of portrayed that just sold the character for me. And Shades of the comic book is completely different from Shades on this Netflix show. Like, anyone who's a comic book enthusiast may or may not be happy with it, but I thought it was fantastic the way they played him out. His loyalties were never in question, but at the same time, you knew that he was the man with the plan. Diamondback respected him and respected his thoughts and opinions. And Cottonmouth, at the same time, Shades comes onto the scene, is like, you're making mistakes, you're doing this wrong. Even when everything was falling to crap, he was still remained loyal until that betrayal happens, at which point he moves on. The issues between him and Cottonmouth and the way he kind of insinuated himself amongst all the key players just shows that he was thinking ahead. He saw Cottonmouth was like, yeah, it was good. I mean, he saw Cottonmouth was going down, and then he saw his play with Mariah. He went with that. Basically, he didn't make a single mistake in the movie that I saw.
TV show.
Oh, TV show. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. In the TV show, he didn't make a mistake, and the writers didn't have to write him out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me go ahead and jump in because he was the person watching the throne. He had ambitions, but he was always trying to put himself in the right situation to take advantage. And when that does happen, he thinks Diamondback is done. And then Diamondback comes back and is like, oh, yeah, you thought you were going to be in charge. But, like, no, I'm still in control. I believe Juice. I can't see him in any other role other than Juice. As Keith mentioned, that he was always counseling people. Again, he's trying to put himself in a position where he can create for himself rather than depending on other people. He wants to be the boss, but in order to be the boss, you have to play the role first.
That made him an immediate threat because he was always prepared. He had plan B, C, D, E.
When Cottonmouth dies, he's the person that says, let's set up Luke Cage.
Right.
Let's make Luke Cage the villain because that would solve our problems. That would allow us to operate without any type of reins. So let's talk about some of the relevant side characters. So we're going to talk about Pops, who was played by Frankie Faison, who departs very early in the season. But James, do you want to go ahead and make some small comments about that?
Okay, Pops, I was upset that he was not in the series that long, but he was a very relevant character because he's the one who put Luke on his path to become the hero. He always gave him great advice, and also he had a past as well that he basically made a better life for himself once he escaped from his past because he was locked up, he was a criminal as well, and then he became a centerpiece in the community.
Yeah, and he and Cottonmouth have a background, and also another side character's father had a past. But go ahead and finish, James.
Like I said, he was the character that pushed Luke towards becoming a hero, and he always gave him great advice, and he looked up to him. He saw him as a father. He was Luke's father figure. So when his character passed or was killed, it motivated Luke to become the person that he should have been from the very beginning. So without Pops, Luke probably would not have stepped out of the shadows and become what he ended up becoming.
All right.
So he was very important.
Keith, do you want to mention something?
I thought that not really. Pretty James said it all right now. Personally, character is pretty straightforward. I thought a little cliche though.
Yeah.
Well,
but needed. It was cliche, but needed.
Well, I've made a comment about Coming to America. So Pops owns a barbershop, which we haven't mentioned. If you've seen Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, there are a lot of scenes where people are discussing sports, discussing politics in a barbershop. The barbershop is a place where you come to air out all your grievances about life. The same thing with the Ice Cube movie series Barbershop, that you go to the barbershop to talk trash to people. You go to the barbershop to get advice, to get self-help. That happens in this show, which, again, is referential to those two movies I mentioned. His role is the person that puts Luke on his arc of supposed greatness, but is also a flawed person himself. So let's talk about the last character, who is Bobby Fish, who was the guy that seemingly hanged out in the barbershop, whose name is Ron Cephas Jones. James, you want to make a small comment about him?
Well, I believe Bobby Fish took on the role as Pops. Once Pops was killed, Luke did not have that person to somewhat guide him, and I believe Bobby Fish took on that role. Like it seemed like he was also Pop's business manager at the time because he held the finances down for the barbershop. That doesn't really get mentioned too much until later on in the series. I mean, he played his position. He was a supporting character. He just assisted Luke with necessary advice. It was his sounding board. Like when he had issues, like I said, he replaced Pops. Not as wise as Pops, is not as influential as Pops was to Luke, but still influential enough to keep him on that path.
All right, Keith, do you want to make a comment?
Bobby Fish was there so that you can get some idea of the logistics of Luke Cage taking over the barbershop. I really didn't think too much about him other than just what he was and everything. He's the guy who can say, "Oh, Pops did this. Oh, Pops did that," and without having to have the characters waste screen time searching for that information, so the audience understands, how he took over that area and stuff.
All right. Well, let me just go ahead and jump in that he seems like a character that would exist in a Spike Lee film. So earlier I made a comment about Do the Right Thing where it starts to pull about the tension between police, the tension between other races in a environment. So here you have his character seemed to toe the line that he had good relationships with other people, that after Pops, who was murdered by one of Cottonmouth's cohorts, that he says like the barbershop needs to be the centerpiece again. It needs to be the place that people come to relax. Let's go do this. I'm going to ask a question, and I just want your thoughts about that. Where does Luke Cage rank among Daredevil and Jessica Jones? So the two other shows that are a part of the Defenders series, that they are the lesser tier of the Avengers. But in the Marvel universe, you have the Avengers that are the big team, and technically X-Men, but that's not owned by Marvel right now, but it's owned by Fox. But the Defenders is something that Marvel and Netflix are setting up to be the next big team-up group. So where does Luke Cage rank among Daredevil and Jessica Jones? James.
That is kind of hard. Because I like all three.
Well, let me just jump in. I'll go ahead and comment first. So these shows aren't just superhero shows. They are totally different from each other. So as you would have Daredevil being a more crime-driven action show, Jessica Jones deals with a lot of emotional issues, deals with relationships, deals with personal tragedies,
Traumatic issues,
deals with family issues. That is what set Jessica Jones off in her path.
Right.
And with this one, this is slightly a exploitation film from the 70s, slightly a action show at some points, but it stays in that lane of this is what I want from a 70s movie, something like Shaft, Superfly. That is what this show is. But I just talked about Daredevil being an action show, Jessica Jones being a little bit more emotional.
More of a drama.
A drama that just happens to be about superheroes.
Right.
Like this is a 70s exploitation film that just happens to be about a superhero. But Daredevil is that one that is, yes, he has superpowers, which is his senses. It is also more of a crime mafia show. So, James, do you want to comment now?
That helped me out. That helped me get my ideas straight. So on that note, from a comic standpoint, I would put Daredevil first, then Luke Cage, then Jessica Jones. Now, from just an overall standpoint, I can relate more to Luke Cage. I would still put Daredevil first, then Luke Cage, then Jessica Jones. They're still, I mean, it's very close. It's very close. I can't like Luke Cage or like well Jessica Jones is last, but it's just like Jessica Jones is not last by far. They're very close. I liked all of them, but because Daredevil was more comic book, Luke Cage is more of a '70s black exploitation film, comic book
I
elements.
also forgot to mention Action Jackson at some point. But
Action Jackson, good God.
yeah, I can see that too. And
Carl Weathers.
Jessica Jones is more of a drama with superhero elements as well. I mean, but that's the order: Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones.
Keith.
I agree with James. Daredevil stays in the first place for me only because I like the action in Daredevil a little bit more. Third episode of Daredevil was like the second time I've ever seen one put together like that. That hallway fight scene when he gets the kid out.
Yeah, in a previous podcast, we talk about Narcos having a single camera shot, and then also referencing True Detective season 1, episode 5. That
Yes.
that is also an awesome single camera shot. But go ahead, Keith.
That kind of cemented me. Like Daredevil wasn't just a comic book show. It was, I mean, it's an action show. But what I like the most about Luke Cage is that I like the soundtrack for Luke Cage. I could relate to it, like James said. I can relate to the characters. I like the characters. I like that they took more background characters, such as the police department, and fleshed them out a lot more.
Right.
All three of them did very well in terms of pulling from the source material. They didn't deviate too far, only deviated far enough to make the stories work. Luke Cage kept very closely with his comic book origins. I thought all the characterizations were well. So I kind of ranked Daredevil a little higher than Luke Cage, but at the same time, Luke Cage it does something different and it does it extremely well.
All right.
Jessica Jones I rated about the same in that the same way is that it brings something different to it. The action wasn't that good, but at the same time, it was a lot of
A lot of good drama.
yeah, there's a ton of good drama in it. It was a lot of good drama in it, and it did well, and especially for what it was, the audience it was trying to accomplish. So it's kind of hard to rank them in terms of one another
All
because
right.
they're not action movies.
All right.
I mean,
Well,
they're not action shows and stuff. So
let me go ahead and I will rank this. So, Daredevil at the top. Great show. Daredevil season 1, great show. Daredevil season 2, slightly a little bit less than the first season, but the thing is that I would put Jessica Jones and Luke Cage on the same level as number 2.
Okay.
For different reasons. I remember watching Jessica Jones, and maybe up to episode 3, I was like, what in the world is going on with this? Like, this is not what I expected. And then as it went on, where there was a lot of manipulation and how people were being used, and came to appreciate it. So with Luke Cage, that first episode rubbed me the wrong way. As someone that loves music, I was like, this is just way too much music. And
what?
hold on, I'm not finished commenting. And the tone of the first episode rubbed me the wrong way. This is its own thing. This is what they're trying to do. This is how they're building the show, as all those things I described earlier. And then it works. So I went back and watched the first episode after I finished the whole season. And now I understand everything that they were building. I rank Jessica Jones and Luke Cage at the same. So let's go ahead and provide some wrap-up thoughts and get into some scores. James, quick comment about Luke Cage, and then can you give your score?
Okay, the show was great. Great show. Acting was pretty good. Storyline was great. I like the character progression through with all the characters involved. I like the story progression. There was nothing that I could really say negative about. The only thing that was negative about was what I mentioned with Mike Coulter's performance when displaying certain emotions. That's the only thing I really had an issue with. I do agree with Keith. Alfred Woodard did a great job. She did a great job, but yet they maybe should have gotten someone younger. I'm not quite sure who. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving this an 8.
I give the show a high 8, so I'll give it an 8.5 or so. Again, I like the acting, I like the music, I like the atmosphere, I like the villains and the characters. And the show didn't really slow down. And at the point where I thought it would slow down, it actually presented something interesting. I thought the police portion with Misty Night would have been the slow points of the show, but they weren't. The second half of it with Diamondback, I thought that was probably the best, but he wasn't as strong as Cottonmouth was.
Yeah, Cottonmouth was a better villain because he was a relatable villain.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just go ahead and comment on a couple of things that I will also give this an 8. One of the things is that we talked about how this is so music driven. It plays off of a lot of scenes that uses music to drive home the point. So as someone that loves music, I've listened to music all my life, but the show reminds me of Black Dynamite. And one of the things is that Black Dynamite had a lot of music made just for that movie. And one of the people that made all that music is one of the people that scored this show. So, like, all those songs of Black Dynamite that were awesome songs. Adrian Young did a lot of the music. So, along with Ali Shaheed Muhammad, who is the DJ for Tribe Called Quest, if I was going to do something like this, there are people that I would go to. DJ Premier, Pete Rock, RZA, and then Ali Shaheed Muhammad. Like, those would be the top 4 to make sure that this happens the way that it has. So if you listen to some of the RZA scores for some of the movies that he did, Kill Bill, it sounds like this. If you listen to Pete Rock, it sounds like this. If you listen to a lot of DJ Premier stuff, it sounds like this. But this is like East Coast hip hop, 70s music that is aggressive in its tone, very down tempo at times, but it all works. I'm just going to wrap up saying that. I love the music. The music makes the show for me. The acting complements the music.
Right.
As opposed to it being the other way around for me. That I said, this sounds like a Wu-Tang album. It sounds like a Wu-Tang album.
And that's why I love it.
Like, Method Man shows up. And I'm like, yes, this is exactly how I feel about this. Like, this is a Wu-Tang album. There's Method Man. Where's Inspector Deckhead? Somebody needs to go find him. Where's Jizzard? Where's RZA? Like, I want all that. You even put Capadonna in it.
Oh, God.
He's in Wu-Tang. I know how you feel about him, James. Doesn't matter.
Resurrect ODB put him in his joint.
Where's Raekwon at? Like, the whole show sounds like a Ghostface album.
And it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because when the kid on the street was like, yeah, I got Tony Stark, man. First thing came to my mind, you talking about Tony Stark Ghostface? I wasn't even thinking about Tony Stark Iron Man.
And that's the Beast Gang Podcast. You can find more of our podcasts at beastgang.com, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, as well as Twitter.